Welcome to Dinner for Two. You're here with Chef Warren Goodgull. We're going to do some great braised chicken tonight, Mediterranean style. We're going to do some broken rosemary potatoes and some fantastic glazed carrots, right? So I've had my pan preheating for a couple of minutes here. We're just checking to see if it's nice and warm. So the first thing that I do is always touch the pan. If it's cold, you know you can let it preheat for a little bit longer. But if you're not sure, we're going to do that famous water trick that we do here at Dinner for Two. So I'm going to get a couple drops of water. We're going to throw it in the pan to see if it beads. All right, we have some beating action here. So the water's beating. I have my skinless chicken thighs. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna get them in the pan and brown them beautifully. Now we have no oil in the pan, so it's very important the pan's nice and hot. I'm gonna put my chicken thighs right in the pan here. Pan's been preheated for a few minutes. You might hear those funny sounds, but that's okay. So we get them in. Now when we're doing our cooking, we're not gonna put a lot of seasoning on it in the beginning. If we put lots of salts and peppers and lots of things like paprika and especially red spices, they'll burn. So we're going to sear the meat, brown it beautifully for a short time here. Approximately 8 minutes is what we're going to brown this chicken for. I'm going to put the lid over like this just so we don't have any fat splattering. And we'll give that a few minutes to go. While we're doing that, we're going to start our broken rosemary potatoes, right? So I have my 1-quart pot on the go. We're going to put a bit of butter in the bottom here. Approximately, I'm going to use about a tablespoon of butter. We're going to put it in the pan. I have a cold pan. A bit of a whack in there. And now I'm going to turn my pan on to a medium-high heat just to melt that butter, right? Now we don't want to burn the butter because it'll become very nutty flavor. So it's a little bit of butter in the bottom. What we're going to do is when the butter gets nice and hot, we're going to add the rosemary in. When the rosemary gets into that hot butter, it's going to really sweat the rosemary really fast. And what we're going to do is add the potatoes at that point, a little bit of chicken broth, and we're going to cook it. It's not going to take a long time for these potatoes. We'll cook them on a medium-low heat once we get it going. And it's going to be a nice complement to the dish we're making here today, right? So we're going to use some rosemary. We're using a lot of Mediterranean flavors. We got some capers. We're using some sun-dried tomatoes. All these flavors, some Kalamata olives are going to come out and make a great dish and infuse fantastically together. All right, so the butter's melting nicely. I'm just going to take a pinch of rosemary. I'm going to throw it in the pan, right? I like my rosemary. That's 1 pinch. I'm going to go 2 pinches today. Add a little more extra flavor. You can see it's bubbling nicely like that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to add my potatoes right into the pot, right? We're going to put the potatoes in there, okay? And some salt and black pepper. Season up a little bit here. A little bit of the black, cracked black. Little black is always nice to add to our dishes, some cracked black pepper. And then what we're going to do now, the butter's really hot. The rosemary's sweating nicely. We don't want to burn anything here. So I'm going to add a little bit of chicken broth. Now, you can get chicken broth at the store. Some basic chicken soup is fine to use. You can make a nice stock at home. It's also very nice. But we're going to put in here probably about a 1/4 cup or so, if I don't spill it all over the stove. And that's sizzling away nicely. You put the lid on. When the whistle goes off, we will shut this vent and turn it down to the lowest heat and just let it sit on the side. Let's have a quick peek at our chicken and see how that's doing. So the chicken's browning nicely now. It's very important when you want to do things like crispy fried chicken or really nice browning on meats is to not close the lid. Once we close that lid, we create a lot of moisture, and what will happen is you're not going to get that crispy brownness as much, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to leave this ajar. Chicken's looking nice. I'm going to put a little bit of salt and pepper on the top part of the chicken here. It's more so anything for a bit of a presentation. You'll see when we're done the chicken dish, this little black pepper I'm putting on the top is just going to look really nice. So it's on the top side before I flip it. Now, I did mention earlier about putting seasonings in the pan, they may burn. We're going to flip this chicken and we're not going to brown it as long on the other side, so those seasonings are not going to get a chance to burn. But it's looking browning beautifully here. And let's give it a check and see if we're ready to give it a bit of a flip. All right, so if you just pull on the meat and it comes apart beautifully like that, it's good to go, right? So we've got lovely browning on the chicken here. I'm going to flip the chicken over. All the chicken we flip. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add in some Spanish onions. So we're going to add the onions into the pan to saute lovely and to sweat out. So it's about a full onion I cut up here. Whoops. We're going to spread it all around. And also what I'm going to add in here are the whole garlic cloves. All right, so when we put the garlic into the pan, I love cooking with whole garlic cloves because they almost taste like potatoes when you're done. And they have such a great flavor, right? So it's very important, especially with the garlic, that is touching some of the steel because we want that garlic to cook. Nobody wants to have a whole garlic clove that's not cooked. So now we flip this over. Just move everything around. I'm moving the onions off the chicken because we want everything to be touching some of the steel to brown beautifully here, right? So I'm going to leave this ajar still. We're going to cook this for approximately another 4 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to start adding some more ingredients into this and just making it really yummy. All right. So while this is on the go, we're getting close to flipping our chicken. I'm going to start our baby carrots here, right? And what we got today to use is something fantastic. We have some black carrots as well as some regular carrots. And I love these black carrots. They're fantastic when you're doing things like stews and soups. They can really add a lot of color into what you're cooking, right? So what we're going to do is I have my, my 8-inch frying pan here. We got it on the go. I'm going to turn this on to a medium heat. Again, I'm going to put a little bit of butter in here, right? We're going to caramelize some brown sugar with the butter. So about a tablespoon of butter into the pan. There we go. And we're going to let that melt with a bit of brown sugar. When the brown sugar is just starting to caramelize, now, you know, cooking is all about emotion and feeling and just deciding on what your flavors are going to be for that night. So we're going to use exactly that amount of sugar today, okay? That's what we're going to use today to have our flavors, right? So we get this on the go. Butter's melting here. We don't want the pan too hot so the sugar won't caramelize without the butter. If it starts to caramelize without any liquid or moisture in there, it's going to become more of like a thicker caramel. We don't really want that. We're going to melt the butter, get the sugar on the go, it's starting to melt nicely. I can smell the chicken and the onions and the garlic is fantastic. It's really coming out some great flavors. It's browning, sauteing beautifully. Always have a peek. We always want to see what we're cooking, right? So things are on the go. I see we have a little bit of steam starting to come out of our potato pan here. We're going to wait for that whistle to go off and then turn it down to a lower heat. We're going to add our this mixed up here. Now you see how I have in the pan here. The sugar hasn't absorbed a lot of all the butter we've put in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a bit more butter into the pan to absorb some of that sugar. There we go, right? So we get that on the go. Just let that melt a little bit. I'm going to add the carrots right into the pan. We're going to put the carrots in there. And we're going to saute that just a little bit. Then what we're going to do is add a little bit of chicken broth, put the lid on. That's take a few minutes to cook, right? So these are raw carrots. Let's give a bit of a toss around in the sugars. Sugar's kind of caramelizing nicely, all right? And our whistles, you can hear, the whistle's going to go up with the potatoes here. We got a steam coming out of here. So what I'm going to do is shut this vent. Whistle's just starting to go off here, which is a great time. We're going to shut the vent. We're going to turn the stove down to the lowest heat on the stove. These potatoes can take about another 15 minutes and they're good to go. And we have our broken potatoes. We'll give them a quick smash, taste the flavor, and that's another yummy dish. But while we're on the go here, this chicken we're going to take out of the pan. The chicken we're going to get on the go here. And we browned our chicken beautifully, right? So it's nicely browned, right? I'm going to take it out. This is what I mean for the presentation. You get a little of those black speckles on the meat when we take that out of the pan like this. So chicken's browned nicely. Now, it's important that you don't wait too long on this because we're going to add some more ingredients into this pan. We don't want anything to burn, right? So I'm going to take this off the heat. It's a little bit hot. What's so fantastic are the nice caramelized flavors in the bottom of the pan. That's going to add so much flavor to the dish and really enhance it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a teaspoon of tomato paste. I'm going to throw that right in there. I'm going to add a pinch of chili pepper as well, and right into those onions and garlic that are sauteing. The pan's getting nice and hot here, so we just took everything out. And I'm going to add in some crushed tomatoes. So I'll put the tomatoes in. I have some sun-dried tomatoes we're going to put in here as well, right? The sun-dried tomatoes, I'm going to give them a quick cut up. You know, sometimes I throw them in whole, sometimes we slice them up. I'm just going to give these a quick slice, just into big chunks, just so it separates throughout the dish a little bit better. So I'm going to cut them up and throw them right into the pan. Just like that, it's going to be a great flavor enhancement. Also, what we're going to do here is we're going to get this pan smoking hot at this point. I'm going to turn the heat up. And what we're going to do is deglaze the pan with white wine, right? So now as I'm stirring everything around, all those little bits of brown flavor have come off the bottom of the pot, which is fantastic, okay? And I'm going to add more rosemary. I love my rosemary. I'm going to put some rosemary into this as well. And just saute that up, get that pan nice and hot. And then when it gets really hot, we'll deglaze it, right? I do see here our carrots are going nicely as well. They're starting to caramelize. So at this point, before the carrots burn, that sugar's getting nice and hot, we're going to add a bit of chicken broth into this, put the lid on, and just a little bit of chicken broth, a few tablespoons. We're going to put the lid right onto this thing and just let that cook at a medium-low heat, and that should be good to go when the dish is ready, right? So everything's cooking nicely now. So a couple minutes have passed. We got the pan nice and hot. I'm going to deglaze with about a cup of white wine. Again, don't forget your measurements have to be perfect in cooking because it's all about your personal preference, right? So we're going to, a little bit of white wine in the pan. General rule of thumb is when you're cooking with wine and alcohol, we want to reduce it by half, and that just gives a nice, really strong flavor, cooks out some of the alcohol. So that's in there. I'm going to put a little touch of nutmeg into this dish as well here today, right? So a little dash of nutmeg, not too much. Nutmeg has such a great flavor. While that's reducing a little bit here, what we're going to do is do a chiffonade of basil. We're going to show you how to do a quick chiffonade of basil here today, and I'm going to cut up some peppers that go into this dish as well, right? So for the chiffonade, what we're going to do is, nice thing is to get your basil leaves. Chiffonade basically means it's just sliced really nice and thin. We put them all together like this, and then we kind of roll them up like a cigar, and then we just give it a quick slice. So just go like this, just roll it up, a nice quick roll. And then just a little slice, just to give it a nice, just so it goes through the dish. The flavor just goes all into the dish all the way through, right? So I'm going to cut up my chiffonade of basil. It just looks like that. Right? And then we have some red peppers here and some yellow peppers, right? Now because this dish is going to, everything's kind of bigger. We're not having a little bit of julienne, which is slicing it. For the peppers, I'm going to cut them more in like an Asian stir-fry type cut. So just like little triangles, just quick and easy. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just something really nice that'll add some color to the dish. So I'm going to just cut them up like this. It's a quick chop, keep moving it around. And I'll do the same thing with the yellow peppers. I'm going to put the two together and just go like this. And all right, so that's on the go, right? So that's cut up nicely. I'm not going to add my peppers right off the bat because if they cook too long, they lose a lot of the color. So we're going to add the peppers and the basil we're going to put in towards the end with the Kalamata olives that we have here today, right? So the chicken's braising nicely, on the go. The wine's reduced. We've got a lot of the juices from the tomatoes coming out. We're going to add some chicken broth, right? About a cup of chicken broth. And then what we're going to do now is put the chicken back into the pan and we're going to braise it like this. I'm going to put it the same side down that I took out because they didn't cook as long as the top side. So we're going to put it like this, and then we're going to braise these for about 10 minutes or so, right? So I can see what some steam come out of carrots here. Can you see that lovely color in the carrots? The black carrots add such a beautiful color. Now, I've got this liquid in here. The idea is we're going to reduce this liquid down until it gets nice and thick to coat those carrots. So as I'm looking at this, I want that to be bubbling a little bit more. So I'm going to turn the heat up because you want to reduce that flavor, get it really nice and strong and nice thickness around those carrots. So with steam coming with potatoes, potatoes are good to go. I'm going to turn these right down here. I'm going to put the lid on the chicken. And then in about 6 minutes, we're going to add in the olives, the capers. We're going to add in the chiffonade of basil. We're going to add in the yellow peppers, the red peppers. We're going to let it cook about another 5 minutes, and we're good to serve. All right, so as you know, our cookware will call you when it's time to do something, right? This is really fantastic. So what we're going to do here, we've got some steam coming out. You guys can hear the whistle. We're on a medium-high heat. I'm going to shut that vent, and now I'm going to turn it down to the lowest heat to a simmer. I'm going to let that simmer about 8 minutes, and we're good to go. All right, so you guys hear that, right? So you know what that means. Easy way to cook. So let's have a peek to see what's in here. Everything's cooking fantastic. It looks nice and yummy. Those peppers have just started to cook. I've never been a fan of overcooked peppers. I like them to have their color. Give it a quick stir around and turn this off, and we're ready to plate. All right, so we have our chicken here. Now the broken potatoes, right? We have the butter, the stalk on the bottom, right? I call them broken because all I do is break them, just like this. Sort of a half mashed potato, right? So we kind of just smush them up a little bit. Now, when you're cooking these potatoes, all the juice and that flavor is going to be on the bottom, right? So we're going to put them into a bowl. I'm going to quick flip upside down, right? And give this a quick stir, just a quick toss with the potatoes, right? Move those flavors around, and it's a half mash, right? Now I'm going to add a little bit of butter to this to give it a little bit more flavor. You could always add olive oil if you wanted. I mean, as I said earlier, cooking is all about what you want it to be, right? So then we have our carrots here. They cook beautifully. The glaze is nice and thick, coating those carrots with that great flavor. But before we do plating, I'm just going to give a quick chop on some chives for a little bit extra garnish on the plate here, right? So I have some chives here. I'm going to cut them in half, and then we're going to, with chives, I always like to cut them nice and small, right? Now don't forget, rule of thumb, you want to keep those 3 fingers tucked in, right? Otherwise, you're going to cut them off. and we don't want to have any, you know, fingers in the dish. So we keep those fingers in, and a nice roll on the blade, and we slowly move the fingers back, and we get a nice even slice on the chives. These chives, basically, I'm just gonna sprinkle them on the top. They're nice to add a little bit extra flavor. We can never have too much flavor, and that's nicely chopped up, right? Now, something else that's really good to know. We all work in the kitchen, we love to cook, we have great tools to use. We're always going to be concerned about safety. A great trick is under your cutting board, so it doesn't slide around, is I always put a little cloth underneath that's damp. If you have a wet cloth underneath, it stops the board from sliding around as much, so when you're cutting, it's a lot more stable, right? So that's a great tip to know as well, right? All right, so I think we're all good to go. I know I'm hungry because it's looking really good. The kitchen smells fantastic. So let's get this all plated up. All right, we have our chicken here. Chicken thighs looking fantastic. And, all right, oops, you know what? Let's start with the potatoes here. I'm gonna put a spoon of potatoes right under the plate, just like this. All right, it's like a broken potato, so it's not really a mash. It's not a whole cooked potato, right? A little bit of potato here. And we're gonna put 2 chicken thighs on the plate. Move this right over here. So we have our chicken thighs like this. We're gonna put this one on this side over here. Just like that, all right? Then we're gonna get our slaughtered spoon and this lovely sauce with the peppers. And we've got the capers in here and the basil and nicely caramelized whole garlic cloves. Just beautiful with this dish, right? The sauce is fantastic, all right? So a little bit of on the bottom. I love my olives. Get the olives into that dish as well. And a little bit of sauce we're gonna pour right onto that. And we're gonna add the carrots and we're good to go. All right, so our caramelized carrots are here. Grab my tongs again, and it's looking yummy. It smells fantastic. I'm gonna put a couple of the red carrots on one side. We'll put a couple of the darky carrots on the other side. And there we have it. And we have Mediterranean braised chicken. To finish it off, a little bit of feta cheese on top. All right, and then, whoops, and then I also have a little sprig from the carrots. And doesn't that look yummy? When you have your friends coming over and you're preparing meals like this, they're gonna think you're a professional chef, but it's that easy when you have the love for cooking. I'm Chef Warren, and that's the way we like to do it at Dinner for Two, because life is delicious.